Good day everyone, Dr. Blob here, and welcome to the second day of Arknights. We have beat our farewells, way ahead of schedule, so now it's time to have some proper frights. Or at least talk about something scary, since I'm not a fan of jump scares. Suspense is better than cheap shots, fight me. Thus, we'll be going world trotting. After all, Terra is already a rather bleak place. Therefore, finding scary places in it will be rather easy. Not to mention, this idea has been suggested by a friend of mine for some time, so I guess it's time I deliver.
Oye, ¿va a haber video del API?
Eventualmente. As mentioned, Terra is already a rather depressing place, with its isolated countries, constant wars, and the occasional risk of infection via malfunctioning devices, yet with the spots of hope here and there. So of course there are those monoliths of darkness, ready to trash hope and dreams at the drop of the hat, be it to greed, bad weather, or downright alien meddling, though greed seems to be a constant. So, in no particular order, these are the scariest places in Terra. Yep, I'm repeating that joke. No, I am not sorry. As expected of one of the toughest places in Terra, the Ursus Empire is without a doubt one of the more frightening places in the planet. Not only do they have the largest army, only rivaled by giants, but their elite forces are constantly fighting monstrosities on a daily basis, meaning that if it wasn't for said incursion from what I can only classify as hell, the Ursian army would have bodied most of the continent in months. Not for lack of trying though. While on the surface the Ursus Empire shines as one of the strongest nations in Terra, its power is far from stable. Not to mention that if you live outside the main cities, you could pretty much consider yourself a member of the wastelands, with added taxes. However, that is not the scary part. In order to protect Ursus' facade of stability, the Empire is for a monolith to be respected and feared. So long you do as you are told and stay in the place you are born into, you should be fine, but dare to challenge the might of the Empire just for a moment, and you will suddenly be surrounded by black snow. The Emperor's Blades, analogues of the Pricknick from the real world, are but monsters powered by the very diamonds they fight, and they will make use of said power in order to protect the Empire. And if their historical counterpart is anything to go by, they are more than willing to get their hands dirty with everyone within the Empire. And I do mean everyone, from the humblest of peasants or the mightiest of nobles, to even some random fossil which happened to work for them once in the past. If you ever cross the Empire, you will be laid to rest in black snow. Oh, and if you happen to be infected, congratulations, you have just been promoted to mine worker without a salary. Fun for the whole family! Similar yet distant to the Ursine Empire, Casimir shines as a beacon of wealth and power, with its peaceful and advanced cities shining bright while guarded by the might of their campaign knights, a land of prosperity. Yet again, this is but a pretentious slogan some community board thought it sounded cool. Like Ursus, Casimir is far from the show the project, and while nowhere near as authoritarian as the Empire, the life of its citizens are just as expendable, if the shards say so. You can have a proper establishment completely separated from the night's spectacle or the big corporations, but just have a knight dislike your product or a board see you as an acceptable loss, and then you can say goodbye to your livelihood, alongside your life in most cases. The authority held by the Chamber of Commerce and its sponsors knights is so absurd, it's considered pointless to oppose them in any way, shape or form, breaking the wheels of those foolish enough to have been born a visionary. And if you think the camping knights will do something about it, well, they care only for the safety of the nation from outside sources, as they couldn't care less what the commoners do among them. And you could say, but look, they did help change the status quo during their light, to which I reply, they didn't care about any of it. They only saw that the Chamber of Commerce was getting too chummy with outside influences, and see it in their bare interest to interfere because it put the country in risk of invasion. And while they did help in the beginnings of a change for Casimirs, as soon as they got what they wanted, they were sure to keep ignoring everyone's suffering. And if you happen to be infected, you are now allowed to work as a cannon fodder in underground gladiator pits, with the possibility to jump to the big leagues. Granted, the country is changing, But the fact all the people in Casimirs lived in peace with such an arrangement is undoubtedly terrifying. The prelude to the dystopian future seen in worlds such as Cyberpunk and Blade Runner had no doubt their roots in places like Casimirs. But let's say you are fed up with your country and want to make it out on your own out there, be it infected, criminals, or disenfranchised. Surely the lands outside can't be any worse than the cities they live in, right? Endless battlelands as far as the eye can see, constantly hit by catastrophes, thus infested with originium in all directions, not to mention the numerous creatures mutated by it, prowling for the next meal. And while we have seen people making a living in such inhospitable places, it is either a handful of individuals trying to survive in these savage lands and barely succeeding, or hardened marauders who prey on the former. The terrifying factor of the wastes is not only its harsh environment, but rather the dread of having to live there. So either you submit to your current regime, or venture into the wild beyond its walls, a decision former landship citizens couldn't take lightly, yet the reality forced them to take the plunge. See it like this: you are back day from choosing between becoming a pariah or venturing into the harshest place on the planet. I thought every citizen in Terra must, at least, have once in their life, especially if you happen to contract a certain rock disease. Funnily enough, there is one thriving civilization in this forsaken place, that being the coalition of mining companies better known as Rim Biliton, who managed to survive by sheer force of will, fitting for Terra's equivalent of Australia. So technically, traveling from city to city is equal to venturing into the outback. Now that's a scary thought. This one was inevitable. After all, it is based in one of the most renowned horror writers of all time, and as such, the terror from the deeps are nothing to scoff at. After all, the sheer terror born from thalassophobia, or fear of the sea, isn't born from the water itself, but by the bewildering feeling of the unknown, that there could be something ready to swallow you whole in an instant, yet you will never be able to see it. A constant threat lying just beneath the surface. Now take that imaginary fear and plunge it into Terra's reality, where the sea terrors are a very real and tangible threat. The fact pretty much nothing is known about them is what gives them such an unearthly feel, despite them being just as part of the planet as everyone else. They can be measured, let alone reasoned to, thus being potentially every terror one can imagine and more. Well, while I do hope for a peaceful resolution between the land dwellers and those from the deeps, the risk they later represent for everyone is very real. Not to mention that, in one possible reality, they didn't just go and took over all of the world, but also took for the stars. Add to this their ability to corrupt and add others to their ranks, it turns them into an ever-growing horde, which we can only hope to stop. Them merely awakening was enough to put an end to the golden age of a whole nation. Just imagine what their full might can do to the whole planet. As in the case of Ursus with Casimirs, the frozen north is not too dissimilar to the sea regarding how little we know about it. But while one can argue that the sea terrors are still a part of this planet, the so-called demons of the north are anything but. Dimensional aliens slowly slipping into Terra by yet unknown means, and with an even less known goal. If the sea takes on Lovecraft's fear of the unknown, the frozen north takes from the indifference from the universe towards us, with a bit of the SCP for good measure, corrupting everything they come in contact with, not unlike the sea terrors, yet in such a way nothing from the previous personality is left, as if anything touched by the demons become nothing less but a puppet. While the sea has been somewhat contained by the discrete actions of two countries, the North is at a constant war with the strongest army in the world, with no end in sight. If anything, they can be considered as a full-fledged menace as the sea, since they seem to be more neutral than the sea terrors, minding their own business so long they are left to their own. But just as the will of the sea could go and take over the world, These unknown forces could just as easily take over the whole planet in ways we cannot even yet come to understand, thus earning its place in this list. For there is nothing more terrifying than that we don't understand. We all know the horror one single Sarkas mercenary influences in the battlefield, and the infamy held by everyone born from Castle. And while I could go on how this place is filled to the brim with the most violent monsters the world has ever seen, I will rather point out something else. Or rather, shed light into something more important. Yes, the Sarkas are feared all across Terra, and said fear is well earned. But it's not like they choose this. If the words of the older Sarkas, and a certain fossil, are anything to go by, they were minding their own business when suddenly the world decided they should be everyone's punching bag, a role they have served for millennia. Apparently, starting with the ones who they once called brothers, and then escalating to pretty much everyone else, to the point the wiping of their country became a recurrent event. As of now, we don't know the exact reason behind this hatred, but the fact the country is still a desolate wasteland is evidence enough of how effective this campaign was. Not to mention how this impacted the whole race, hated by the entire world by mere act of existing. While this is in a top 10, I would like to express why I put Castle at the end of the list. How terrifying it is that, unlike the unknown deeps of the sea or the terrors of the north, the mere act of existence already justifies a consecutive cleansing of a nation. This is but the pinnacle of fear, by grace of fear itself. The new generation don't know what they did, nor what is their so-called fault, yet all they know is that they are hated and feared, and what is worse, they have come to accept and even embrace this part of them, becoming the monsters everyone sees them as. The bigger monster ever seen in Terra, created by Terra itself, and that grudge, all that pain, is something to fear. I'm pretty sure you expected a scarier talk regarding scary places, but to be honest, what makes these choices of mine so terrifying, in my humble opinion, is how real they feel. We have countries so indifferent with their citizens that the mere act of living in them can break their very spirit, unnatural creatures lurking in the dark, ready to pounce without notice. Yet, all of the countries in Terra decide to take it all into one single nation. And if there is something I have learned, is that all this pushing will eventually push back, as Victoria sure felt. But those are my thoughts. I would like to hear yours now. What do you think of my ramblings? Are they onto something, or completely lost the point? Or which place do you think is far scarier? Be sure to share your commentaries down below, to see what is the scariest place in all of Terra. For now, this has been Dark Tabla, thanking you for your time and humbly asking for a share, like and subscribe. And be it frights or suspense, I hope you enjoy this season to your heart's content, so long you don't overindulge on sweets and frights. So until next time, stay healthy everyone.